Social insects and why they are amazing. As one of the most dominant and numerous of all the other animals we are aware of, social insects are a term we frequently hear. Ants, which cooperate and reflect a community structure, are one of the most typical names that come to mind when we hear the phrase common insect. Although there are many different types of social insects and a few mammals as well, the main differences between the various social insects are their reproductive patterns, where the queen is in charge of reproduction and the steriles serve as workers and soldiers, and the structures, functions, and behavior in their castes. In this video, we'll be talking about social insects and why they are amazing. But before we begin our video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for such amazing updates. Let's start the video right away. The reproductive caste members are in charge of not only carrying out reproduction, but also choosing the locations where their colonies would be located and excavating the initial galleries. The soldiers are in charge of guarding the colony against the predator's attraction, while the worker take care of the eggs and larvae and arrange for food for the entire colony by building and repairing the colony's galleries. The types, names, taxonomy, and behavioral patterns of social insects are discussed in this video, along with their traits. But what exactly is a social insect? Many insects, including bees, ants, and other similar creatures, display social behavior in terms of feeding aggregation, shared nesting areas, and parental care provided by the parents for the young. In general, social insects are any type of insect where a member of the kind interacts with other individuals of the same species. However, just a handful of these behaviors aren't enough, in accordance with the ematologist's rules, to qualify as a truly social bug or eusocial in nature. The highest level of social culture used by eusocial insects is known as eusociality, and it includes traits like sharing a common nest site, cooperative brood care, in which members of the same species take turns taking care of an offspring, overlapping generations within the community of adults, in which the young participate in the community's labor force while the adults are still alive, and most importantly, the division of labor. Thus, the term social insect refers to any insect displaying the aforementioned traits during the course of its lifetime. Few social insects named can be roughly categorized as belonging to the Isoptera, Formicidae, and Hymenoptera families. White ants, bees, wasps, and termites are examples of social insects that fall into the aforementioned categories. Bees, wasps, and ants are all members of the Hymenoptera genus, whereas termites are members of the Isoptera genus. The biomass produced by ants and termites alone exceeds the biomass produced by all other species combined in some ecosystems. The African savanna social insect, known as the driving ant, establishes a single colony with about 20 million workers. Another social bug, Formica yacensis, lives in Japan and forms a mega colony that spans approximately 2.7 kilometers and is made of up to 45,000 interconnected nests with more than 1 million queens and more than 405 million steriles. Let's now talk about the types of social insects. The flies that are most frequently connected to social insects are known as brachycerans. The family, Phoridae, is regarded as having the most diversity in nature among the brachycerans connected to the social insect. Termites, ancient and New World army ants, lesser-known social bees, and wasps are common association with these flies. Many of them are classified as parasitoids, parasitized, or scavengers. The Phoridae that lay their eggs in the adult host's bodies are referred to as parasitoids and typically come in huge numbers. In contrast, parasitices are the Phoridae that have not fully developed into adults. The majority of them are scavengers that stay in the waste areas of the big colonies along with army ants, leafcutter ants, and their larvae, because certain of the phorid and seraphids larvae are so similar to ant larvae they prey on ant broods. One particular genus of phorids, which is primarily found in Southeast Asia, has adult females that generate larvae that resembles those made by the adult hosts of army ants, while female seraphids have a rounded, more teardrop-shaped body and are heavily armored so they can easily escape when being aggressively attacked by the army of ants. bees, and termites. The female voids have a modified structure with reduced wings, eyes, and portions of their body's cuticle. Due to the enormous variations among social insects, they have been broadly divided into 5 categories based on how sociable they are by nature. Subsocial insects. They are a step up from solitary insects since they develop a colony of linked locations and demonstrate social behavior. However, they only give parental care and protections to their young, like larvae and eggs, for a little time. Although there are rare exceptions, the majority of insects in this group do not build nests to protect their eggs. For instance, huge water bugs fit into this type. Female adult bugs place their eggs on the male bug's backs, who are then responsible for caring for the eggs hatching until they are not. Quasi-social insects. Compared to subsocial insects, they have a little greater social sophistication. The single generations and the quasi-social insects live in the same nests. They provide supportive parental care for the family's children. The orchard bees, where the females of a generation share the nest and care for and guard their young jointly, are a prime example of a quasi-social group insect. But not every bee that uses the nest to hatch eggs and cooperatively care for young does so when laying their eggs. Semisocial insects. In terms of providing parental care, assistance, and protections to their broods in a single nest together that are of the same generations, semisocial insects are similar to the quasi-social group. However, they also have a small number of non-productive workers. The fact that adults leave as soon as the new generation comes is one of the extremely prevalent characteristics of semisocial insects. To create a new nest or site for the young, the adults depart the nest where the offspring is born. Paperweights are the most prevalent example of a semisocial group. Both the productive and unproductive workers work together to extend and construct new nests for the young to grow in. Primitively eusocial insects. They display every trait a fully social insect would be. The form of a sterile worker caste, however, is where the primary distinctions between eusocial and primitively eusocial insects lies. All castes of insects in primitively eusocial insects are productive, with every minor or no morphological changes. The scavengers, sterile, and army groupings are all the same. For instance, some species of sweet bees are thought to be primitively eusocial because they exhibit no morphological changes in their caste, whereas bumblebees are thought to be primitively eusocial since the queen bee's size is a little larger than the size of the sterile castes. Let's now have a look at the characteristics of social insects. Trail pheromones, which are typically used to indicate feeding or nest locations by leaving trails, are a fairly frequent trait displayed by almost all social insects, especially ants and termites. It is a typical pheromone of social insects that leaves a trail after foraging on the ground, although some subsocial species of insects also exhibit these traits. For instance, every time a termite's abdomen meets the ground, the trail pheromone is released. As they move away from their nests, they leave a well-defined trail behind them every time their abdominal gland touches the substrates. Following caste members work to strengthen the route that the earlier caste members had carefully put down. Even the 10 caterpillars above leave their original path from the nest to the locations of the food supply by pressing the end of their abdominal section against the ground as they make their way back to the nest from the locations of the food supply. Even flying insects rely on chemical trails for navigations. For instance, the Trigona genus of stingless bees leaves a pheromone trail on their route back to the nest from food supply sources. The pheromone is often made of citral. It has been discovered that trail pheromone is a crucial component in the structural equilibrium of the colonies of social insects. It aids in controlling a variety of honeybee behaviors. For instance, honeybees have been employing 15 different glands to produce 36 different types of pheromone trails. Since the earliest eusocial societies, pheromones have played a role in a variety of behaviors, including trail marking, colony defense, colony fission, mating, foraging, and swarming. The following are some additional fundamental traits that the entomologists classified as genuine eusocial behaviors. Family collective parental care for its children across generations. All castes of the species group establish their whole colony in a single communal nest. Within the adult community, the generations overlap, meaning that the young people participate in the community's labor force while the seniors are still alive. Among the working classes, the queens are in charge of procreation, while the workers are in charge of caring for the eggs and bringing in food, as well as building and fixing sites. And the army caste is in charge of defending and watching over the colony. In termites, there is a perpetual cycle of new adults who take on the duty of caring for the colony and who work together to care for and support bringing up the young. This illustrates how generation overlapping is very well understood. In termites, the king and queen are the largest members of the reproduction caste, which is then followed by the army or soldier caste, which is made up of both male and female members and is in charge of protecting the colony from predators. The worker caste, which is in charge of colony constructions and food supply regulations, as well as the care of the eggs in the nests, is the last caste to be mentioned. Now let's jump to the advantages of social insects' behavior. Due to their enormous numbers and social nature, social insects have evolved to be far more resilient and competitive for survival than their solitary counterparts. The social insects develop strong defenses and carry out ferocious attacks to defend their homes and other resources when threatened because they cooperate to locate food supplies and other necessities of life and have a trait of communicating with other family members. The fact that they are a part of a group and live in colonies allows them to compete with larger and more powerful creatures for food and territory. Due to the fact that the work is distributed among different castes, everything is completed fast and in a very systematic manner, giving them the capacity to quickly expand their colony as needed. But because they are so numerous, there are certain negative effects on the human habitat. For example, compared to all other life forms combined, harvesters' ants in the southwest of the United States collect and devour the majority of the seeds. Leafcutter ants are present in South America and consume more foliage than herbivorous mammals do. More than 50 boxes of eerily skinny black ants live in a tiny room at the University of Regensburg. The clonal plant Platytheria punctata, which is native to Central America, has developed a remarkable ability among ants. It can generate daughters from unfertilized eggs. 1 or 2 dormant females can produce clones which can make up the entirety of a P. punctata colony. This consistency emphasizes a mystery. Evolutionary biologist Abel Bernardo points to the roughly 30 ants in a box and explains what is truly fascinating is that they are the same genetically, but depending on their jobs, they will have entirely varied life lengths. Even when well-fed and shielded in the lab, members of the colony's working caste who nurse the offspring, hunt for food, and defend the nest die within 7 months. However, reproductive caste ants, whose only duty is egg-laying, can survive for 10 to 16 months. Bernardo can help but be intrigued by the issues those discrepancies bring up. What accounts for the fact that some ants live twice as long as nestmates with the same genome, and how it is that these ants live longer despite reproduction being a laborious task that accelerates aging in most animals. A tiny group of scientists, including Bernardo and his myrmecologists at Regensburg, have turned to social insects like termites, ants, and bees to assist them to understand the secret of aging. The attention is on mice, Drosophila fruit flies, and the tiny nematode Caenorhabditis elegans, 3 species that researchers have examined and modified for well over a half-century to uncover what limits their lifespans. In aging biology conferences, where this discipline is still in its infancy, many researchers that focus on those species are still unsure about the value of social insects. According to researcher Gro Amdam, who researches bees aging at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences and Arizona State University Tempe, they think it's fascinating and worthwhile to know the diversity of aging. However, they don't believe we will make significant findings about social insects that are important to their field of duty. The fact that social insects' aging is plastic and changes depending on the social situations is even more remarkable. Few social insects are as homogeneous as clonal ants, but most have relatively identical genomes between queens and workers since all colony members are the progeny of 1 or more queens. However, laborers age quickly and die young, in contrast to queens who appear to maintain youth throughout their lengthy lives. In a colony, a worker's life expectancy is determined by its employment, despite the fact that most workers are siblings. By having ants and bees mate or altering their jobs, scientists can hasten, slow down, or even reverse aging in these animals. According to University of Pennsylvania molecular biologist Roberto Bonacio, who specializes in the study of epigenetics in mammals, flies, and ants, revealing the molecular mechanisms underlying these peculiar events may ultimately throw more light on aging in general, including humans. That is the concept. Despite the difficulties, researchers are beginning to connect social insect aging patterns to the underlying chemicals. The connections between reproduction and longevity is one peculiarity they are investigating. Hypocondity nearly always results in rapid burnout in most species. Red deer, for instance, age more quickly if they breed frequently. However, social insect queens defy the norm since reproduction lengthens rather than shortens their lifespan. Heinz's teams discovered, for instance, in a 2005 study that obscurus queens that made it live 44% longer than virgin queens. And that's despite the busy schedules of these mated queens. In comparisons to queens that did not mate or were coupled with infertile males, they deposited up to 5 times as many eggs and did so more quickly. Other researchers have found that termite kings and queens, as well as queens of other ant species, live longer thanks to procreation. In species where just a small proportion of colony workers may also procreate, as the P. punctata ants that Bernardo investigates, those that procreate also live longer. Transposons are DNA fragments that jump through the genome, altering genes and at least in humans and C. elegans, accelerating aging. In termites, their reproductions may mitigate these effects. Transposon activity in 2 different termite species was compared by Judith Korp, a researcher at the Albert Ludwig University of Freiburg, who specializes in termite aging. Older workers have increased transposon activity in species with sterile workers, while they exhibit stronger transposon damage resistance in species where older workers can reproduce. With this, we have got our video to the conclusion, guys. Yes, there are a few challenges when it comes to social insects, but they are overall amazing, aren't they? What are your thoughts on social insect? Do you also feel they are amazing? Let us know your opinions in the comment box. Also, if you like our video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and families. Thank you and have a wonderful day.